In the year 2077, the virtual game called Apocalypse merged with reality. Obviously, the world order collapsed, and Earth became a hell on Earth. Humanity, thanks to this, was also able to awaken unimaginable powers. In the midst of chaos, the biggest playboy in the city of Jiang was able to protect those he loved. The name of the lady in question is Yan, and our dear playboy is named Xiao. He used all his fortune to buy a divine artifact for this girl. Any opportunity he had to obtain valuable equipment, he seized to give directly to her. Thanks to the support he provided, Yan eventually became one of the most powerful players in the entire realm. Finally, after several years, the day of their wedding arrived. Truly a couple made in heaven that sparked envy in many. With his beloved in his arms, our boy asked if she really wanted to marry him. She hesitated a bit before giving her answer. It was at that moment that the greatest betrayal occurred. The girl said she didn't want to marry him. Right after, she pierced our protagonist's chest with a sharp object. Now with her fiancé on his deathbed, she made it clear that money cannot buy true feelings. In fact, she already has a lover. Everything she did was accept those gifts for personal gain, as she never accepted the boy's affection. The only person who truly understands her is named John, and she would give her heart to him. Badly hurt, our protagonist still had to endure the humiliation of seeing his wife's lover stepping on his head. With his soul leaving his body, Xiao wondered if this was really true. He never imagined he would be betrayed in the end by the person he loved most in life. Immediately, regret turned into a hatred he had never felt in his entire life. Completely furious, he said that one day he would make her regret what she had done and that he would have his revenge on those despicable people. After living through that intense nightmare, Xiao woke up and is now talking to his beloved, who at the moment seems to be questioning the gifts she receives from him. Still very confused, our protagonist wonders if he really has reincarnated. Our playboy is exactly 1 week before the beta version of the game launches. The girl in front of him uses an extremely generic speech about the gifts she receives, claiming she is being pursued by classmates for being seen as materialistic when in reality she believes she is doing this for the protagonist's own good. It's all just a big scheme to extract even more money from the guy, and now he questioned if this was really for his own good, and decided to reject her. The girl was extremely surprised by this attitude. Imagining that the situation must be difficult for her, Xiao made it clear that he would never give her anything again. Very worried, the girl threatened him, saying that this was just another one of his pranks and that now she would reluctantly accept the gift. But our protagonist simply told her to disappear immediately. This left the blonde girl even more outraged as she didn't like being treated that way. Showing that he was truly willing to go to the end, our protagonist said that the shoes she was wearing were given by him, so he would take them back before leaving. The girl was already shouting at the top of her lungs that he was stingy and that the little money he had didn't make him an exceptional man. In fact, she said he should remember very well what had happened that day because even if he knelt before her, he would be rejected. For our protagonist, that would be a blessing. After all, he has much more important things to do now than waste time with her. Taking his cell phone in hand, our protagonist is now sure that he needs to gather information and resources to prepare himself. He called a woman who did not expect his call. Still, she knew him as the inveterate romantic. It seems our protagonist is a very wealthy person and now wishes to sell all his shares in the company he owns. This would provide him with 20 billion Chinese coins, which is truly absurd. Our protagonist did this to prepare for the arrival of the apocalypse. After all, alone, he will be able to reach the throne. A week after that, the beta version was finally released. Our protagonist returned to this game once again and noticed that the environment still felt quite familiar. He decided to use his own name in the game and was sure that this time he would be a beast tamer. Finally, the preparations were being executed. Now he needed to go to the most important moment of that introduction. He managed to put into the game all the resources he had created in the real world, and by reaching an amount exceeding 1 billion coins in the game, he obtained a secret profession. Surprisingly, his profession would now be wealth itself. Our protagonist had no idea what it was capable of. Shortly after that, a mysterious frog materialized before him. Our protagonist had no idea where that amphibian could have come from, and the creature did not like his arrogant look, saying that it was named Ebisu and that it would be the boy's wealth mentor. The playboy did not expect a frog as a mentor and, mocking him, asked if it would teach him to be a con artist. Snapping his fingers, Ebisu said he would show him how to create wealth. Our dear playboy received several bonus advantages from this secret profession. Indeed, those talents were worthy of a secret class, but none of them were focused on attack, and Ebisu stated that the boy still hadn't understood. And indeed, upon closer observation, Xiao realized that with his current fortune, thanks to his skills, he could earn 22 million a day without doing absolutely anything. As if that weren't enough, he could also gain 22 attribute points daily. Contemplating new horizons, he decided it was time to go to the beginner's village. Upon arriving there, the boy saw no one, as the server had just been launched. Being a beast tamer, the start was difficult since he couldn't tame any intimidating and dangerous creature. Ebisu said he had been reckless in choosing a class that didn't come with weapons, and shortly after that, orcs appeared to eat his flesh. The playboy realized that his luck was already at its limit. Against those level 5 creatures, he would have problems. On the other hand, Ebisu could run faster than expected, and abandoning the boy, said he wouldn't stay there to find out what would happen. Using all the potential of his common sense, our boy decided to run away as well. Exhausted and drained, he managed to reach the city, even though he had almost been turned into fertilizer. Once in the village, our playboy was humiliated by the players for choosing such a useless profession. To them, it was hilarious that the tamer was walking with a hideous frog, but ignoring the situation, Ebisu advised the boy to buy the egg of some creature there. However, our playboy had everything planned. He didn't want just any beast, and even Ebisu was curious now. In light of this, our protagonist announced that they would be going to a secret dungeon because there was a dragon that could be tamed. For that, they went to the Supreme Hall, which excited Ebisu since only players above level 100 could go there. As he climbed the stairs, someone asked him to stop. A bald man said he didn't have what it took to be there, and should train more. Knowing this, the playboy said he had no recommendation but knew that the archmage had lost something and could help him with that. Intrigued, the bald man thought he was being deceived, but our boy seemed to be telling the truth. He pointed to some gold coins that were on the ground. The bald man immediately began to pick them up, and the more he did, the more coins appeared. The playboy now wanted to know if the bald man liked gold. After this brief bribe, he was granted VIP access to the Supreme Hall. Trying to compose himself, the bald man prepared to show the way, and Ebisu, who saw all this from the sidelines, was impressed with the playboy's potential. Finally, our boy arrived at the hall of that building. There were some golems for sale. With them, our boy could dominate the city, but the playboy was not interested in that. Until a huge knight appeared, asking who had allowed his access there. Our boy told that figure he needed to hire a divine guardian golem, and the knight replied that they were so rare that they could not be hired. Inclusively looking at that little beginner, he stated that he couldn't even afford it. Our boy raised his finger and said he would pay $1 billion a day. Intimidated by the brutal power of money, the great knight forgot how to speak for a brief period of time as he was confronted with an overwhelming proposal. In light of this, he said it would be technically impossible but knew a conjurer who could help with that situation. Wanting to know when the boy could pay, the knight heard from the playboy that he would do so after signing the contract. Coming to an agreement, the contract was presented since the knight could summon the conjurer at any time. In the next second, a woman appeared wanting to know who the brat was that had hired her. She was the divine conjurer and would now follow our boy's orders for the next 24 hours. Full of other attributes in abundance, she approached the playboy and asked what he desired. The boy said it was for a difficult task, which made her smile as there was nothing she considered challenging enough. Willing to not waste time, our boy showed the way. After all, the conjurer would have to keep her word. Once in the dungeon, she annihilated the creatures with great ease. All that remained were charred bodies and an impressed protagonist. Other players who witnessed that massacre were very surprised. It was simply inconceivable. Thanks to this, our boy reached level 10 and received an additional bonus for being the first to achieve such a feat. As a standard unfolding of these stories where the protagonist is humiliated and seeks revenge, it was time to receive free recognition, and his deeds were announced to the entire server. Rumors about him began to spread, and our boy hadn't even reached the dungeon yet. After walking quite a bit, Ebisu said the place was far and was already questioning if the boy was right. But indeed, they were getting closer and closer. A player was defeating goblins with mastery. He had been striving since the beginning of the game, yet he was still at level 3. Knowing that our protagonist was already at level 10, he began to see him as a rival. Far from there, the playboy was reaching his destination. He placed his hand on a stone, causing a magical rune to appear. A mysterious structure emerged from the ground below them. The secret area appeared, the dragon's lair. Even the conjurer was surprised by this, as the boy shouldn't have knowledge about it. Once inside, she said that if it was really a dragon, she might not be able to handle it alone, and our boy made it clear that they weren't stupid. They would study the place first. The playboy explained that the location had been stumbled upon by a player, but no one believed him. However, our boy bought the recording of the battle for a generous amount, discovering the dragon egg that was there. This made the conjurer furious, as stealing a dragon egg was harder than fighting one. Even in light of her fear, our boy did his best to encourage her. After all, she was at the divine level, and before them lay the enormous creature asleep on all its treasures. Knowing it was a Category 5, the conjurer was relieved to have a teleportation scroll with her. A Category 3 dragon could already destroy a guild alone. The chances of victory against that one were only 1%. For her, That was enough. The conjurer gave up on the idea. Not even double the value received would change her mind. The playboy said they wouldn't fight. All he needed was time, but she was already decided. Inevitably, our playboy used the power of money to the fullest, tripling the commission. It was at that moment that the conjurer began to feel the winds of Ibiza while on a luxurious yacht, and then hesitated deeply. Completely convinced by the powerful material persuasion, she decided she would risk her life. Maximizing her power, she said she would buy our boy 3 minutes. She granted the protagonist several blessings that would help him in the task of retrieving the egg. Now they needed to be swift, as the creature had awakened and was deeply enraged. The conjurer was undeterred, as she would give everything she had. Summoning great ice stakes, she hurled them at the winged monstrosity. Stealthily, our boy approached the dragon egg, but if he was noticed at any moment, everything would be over. The conjurer's combat grew fiercer, and a mistake could cost her life. Meanwhile, our boy struggled to lift the egg off the ground, which was extremely heavy. Being careless, he let a piece of armor fall to the ground, making noise. Before long, he was already being overshadowed by the threatening shadow of the radiant dragon. Seeing its egg being stolen, the creature became enraged, like never before. Now our protagonist ran desperately. His last hope was the conjurer, who needed to act urgently. She raised a barrier of ice to try to stop the monstrosity. But the dragon would not be contained by something so mediocre. Breathing fire, the poor humans were left trying to beat the Olympic record for the 100 meters dash. They crossed the portal, almost engulfed by the flames. They narrowly escaped being charred, but thank God they managed to get out with the egg. Looking at the valuable object, the conjurer was certain of one thing. If a Category 5 dragon were to hatch from it, everything would have been worth it. Now the conjurer is eager to receive her commission, and our protagonist is ready to make a contract with that creature. His success in this life depends exclusively on that. Finally, the eggshell cracked, leaving everyone anxious. Inside was a green dragon. It was not what they expected, and our playboy was very confused. But upon analyzing the creature's stats, he soon realized that this horned lizard was actually a weapon of mass destruction. Even though it was at level 1, it was a formidable opponent that few could defeat. Now that he knows the little creature is powerful, our playboy feels quite relieved. Ebisu was pleased with this. After all, with the dragon by the protagonist's side, no one would think the frog was his pet. Our playboy approached the frog to look at its emblem, but Ebisu did not like being called that, as he had a name. He wanted to know where Ebisu had gotten that emblem, while the conjurer recognized it as a calamity mark. And upon checking the stats, she confirmed her suspicions. Ebisu demanded the emblem back, stating that he had risked his own life to obtain it. Using his persuasive techniques, the playboy tried to dissuade the frog, but this only made him even more irritated. Claiming the emblem, Xiao said that defeating goblins would be much easier now. With that, he activated a secret mission, to find the Fangs of Ferocity. The conjurer explained that it was a very rare dagger made from the teeth of an abominable creature. Unfortunately, our boy would need to log out of the game, as he had already used all the available time for that day. Bidding farewell to the conjurer, he stated that he would contact her if necessary. As the game was still in beta, he did not blend with reality. The next day, back home, he heard several people saying that the game was very difficult and impossible to continue progressing. Many nations were banning the game in their territory, little knowing what was yet to come in the future. While reading the news, the playboy's phone rang. It was the wretched girl demanding that he pay someone else's hospital bills, as doing so would earn her forgiveness. Our boy regretted not having blocked that despicable being. At the hospital, she was next to her lover, waiting for the playboy's intervention. They did not believe that our protagonist had overcome her influence. The doctor appeared like a loan shark, informing the patient that he would need to pay the bills. As he threatened to throw him out, the wretched girl said they could not do that. But the doctor insisted, and the patient agreed because he wanted to play that new game to earn money. The problem was that the girl had no more resources since our protagonist had woken up to reality and no longer pampered her. In light of this, the lover insisted that she contact our boy, and the villain believed he would soon call back. Regretful. Little did they know that the playboy was sleeping soundly with a clear conscience. After his well-deserved rest, he decided to return to the game world. Back in action, he wanted to start gaining more levels, but Ebisu did not like that since they would now have to work. The city was much more crowded, and the number of players was increasing significantly. And in the midst of the crowd, the level 10 playboy attracted the attention of the extras. As everyone wanted to benefit from his company, our boy fled from those opportunists. Already leaving the city, he continued to be followed, and Ebisu said they would soon be caught by the extras. The solution found was to go to a dangerous area since it would be too risky for the noobs. Relieved, the playboy could continue his life. He had gone straight to a large fortress because he had matters to resolve in that region. The knight guarding the place made it clear that newcomers like him had nothing to resolve there. There, the playboy would undergo the advanced evaluation, but the guard was intrigued. He had reached level 10 too quickly and was still without a team. Our boy revealed that he was a lone wolf, and the guard warned him that this was foolish and that he would surely die. But the protagonist assured him that he had plenty of time to spare. Once inside, a magic circle appeared beneath his feet. Faced with the various possible difficulties, the playboy decided to choose the hardest one, Abyss difficulty. Observing this, the guard was surprised and frightened, thinking that the player could only be joking. Transported to a forest, he remembered that the last time he was there, it could have been better if he hadn't needed to support that cursed girl. Now that he is alone and powerful, he will do everything driven by his vengeful motivation. Finally, he let out the winged lizard he affectionately calls Gray. With the help of that little creature, nothing there could offend him. It wasn't long before something began to stalk him in the forest. An angry snow wolf appeared, ready to chew on the protagonist's flesh. Startled, the playboy commanded the flying salamander to do something. The size difference between the creatures was simply absurd, but one of them was a dragon capable of breathing fire and with exceptionally high attributes. Nothing was left for the wolf. At that exact moment, it was being schooled by violence. After the beating session, the snow wolf made its whole body grow through the supreme technique called Trembolona, using Tremberage against them. This only made the young dragon even more irritated, roaring at its enemy. That roar made the wolf feel immense dread, but fortunately, it wasn't wearing underwear. Otherwise, its situation would have been even worse. Next, the salamander spat fire once again. The arrogant monster was completely defeated. Thanks to this victory, the dragon gained some levels, leaving our boy very happy. Now the pet was a true cataclysm with wings. The playboy noticed that valuable items appeared after that battle. With the bow and dagger in hand, he realized that his rewards were better than in his past life. It was then that Ebisu and the playboy felt they were being watched. A huge testosterone-fueled Madame's cat appeared for the fight. Feeling like a Pokemon master, the playboy commanded the dragon to handle the matter with violence. Obeying its master, the dragon flew into battle without fear of the opponent. Unfortunately, there are no images of the fight, which is sad. But half an hour later, the playboy was exhausted from collecting items. Even so, he wouldn't give up now, as the boss of the challenge was just ahead, and Ebisu doubted that the salamander could face it. Using the knowledge from his past life, Xiao ensured that even at this difficulty, that boss was beatable. In the company of the salamander, he believed he could do anything, so he began to be teleported. Inside a castle, he was eager to show the old frog how things really were. A system message notified that the adventurer had just fallen into the abyss. Now, in an extremely dangerous area full of pride, Xiao said that the only danger there was himself. Entering a hall, he shouted with all his might, calling for the creature that ruled that place. He found himself face to face with a great demon sitting on its throne of violence. That was the king of the abyss, a formidable creature whose favorite pastime was chewing on adventurers. Graduated from the University of Violence with a doctorate in bone breaking. Ebisu wanted to know where Xiao's confidence was now, and the protagonist replied that he didn't know where it was, but that it might have slipped a little down his legs. By the creature's attributes, its attacks were slow, but its strength was such that if the blow passed close enough to steal electrons, forget it. It was certain death. A boss of king category was no joke, and the playboy asked the dragon to obey his commands with caution. Since the enemy was slow, they would need to move a lot. The dragon spat its fireballs. The attack hit the creature, which didn't even bother with the scaled mosquito. Following Xiao's strategy, the salamander continued attacking, avoiding staying in the same position, as that could be fatal. That tactic began to give the playboy hope, as he could already taste victory. It was then that the boss decided to pay attention to the little creature that wouldn't stop talking. Startled, our boy wanted to know why the demon had stopped moving. Apparently, the worst-case scenario was unfolding. It had shifted its focus of aggression. Raising its staff, it prepared a spell to be cast, and both were sure of one thing: they were screwed. A dreadful explosion just occurred. Trying to dodge the attacks, our boy didn't know why he had become a target. He couldn't maintain that situation for long, and the enemy could attack without moving from its spot. But the salamander wouldn't let its master suffer like that, and went back to attacking the demon. That last attack was able to unbalance it. After the demon fell to the ground, the playboy said that if the fight didn't end soon, it would be his life that would end. To his surprise, the monster was defeated, and he began to reap the attributes of that unlikely victory. Gasping and sweating cold, he revealed to Ebisu that he really thought he was going to die that time, and the frog replied that if he had truly been scared, he would have moved faster. Now that they had won, they needed to check the items that were on the creature. Meanwhile, Outside, the system was notifying everyone about the Playboy's achievement. No one could believe that something so grand had been completed in record time. He was the only one so far, and people were already speculating about which region of the real world he could be from. A powerful player ordered his henchmen to discover that person's identity. Some from the same village as the boy were proud that he had been able to accomplish something so remarkable. In the same game, the cursed girl and her lover were trying to strengthen themselves, and he insisted that she ask Xiao for money. The lover believed this was possible, but she was already getting fed up and impatient. She didn't want to ask the Playboy for anything. In fact, she wished that the two of them could manage on their own without depending on the useless Xiao. Within the challenge, our boy managed to obtain a small fragment after defeating the demon. It was an abyss stone, something the Playboy had never seen in his entire life, not even in the past. Ignoring what it could be, he decided to return to the village since he had nothing else to do there. Upon leaving, the knight who had welcomed him was completely immersed in disbelief, as the boy had completed the task alone. Ignoring the knight's reaction, Xiao asked to be sent to the village, something that was promptly executed with the opening of a portal. As part of his reward, the knight gave him a token that allowed free passage through the main city. He also handed him an item of epic rarity given the difficulty level of the mission. It was the emblem of valor, a proof of heroism that granted some attributes. With all this done, it was time for him and his companions to head to the main city. Once inside, Xiao noticed it was very calm. Now he needed to find a beastmaster. Ebisu didn't understand the need for this, but Xiao assured him that he would soon comprehend. After walking a bit through the almost empty streets, he finally found the person he was looking for. He politely asked to change his profession, but the man ignored him, yet our boy insisted, saying he wanted the secret class of beast TAMER. Trying to intimidate him, the old man stated that he would need to prove his strength first by bringing the eyes of 100 wolves. Ebisu wanted to know how the boy knew about those hidden professions, while Xiao said he wouldn't waste time hunting weak beasts. The old man mocked him and called him weak. It was then that the boy said he would prove his worth in another way. He showed him the emblem of valor, leaving the man surprised. After all, that had epic rarity. It was impossible for someone so young to possess that, but he explained that he completed the challenge at abyss difficulty. He even mentioned that he had 2 people on his team, him and himself. Embarrassed, the old man said he had known from the start that the young man was a talented tamer, a true dragon among men. But the boy noticed the change of opinion in record time and didn't like it. In any case, the old man wanted to see what kind of beast had helped the young man complete the challenge at that difficulty. Our boy then showed his divine creature, the powerful green salamander. Moved, the old man never thought he would see something like that in his lifetime. That was the beast of his dreams. However, he told the Playboy that he might not be able to be a beast tamer since the dragon was far beyond his potential. Still, he handed him a letter of recommendation with which he would find the answer he sought. The system announced that he had completed the Dragon TAMER mission and would need to go to the capital to find the true beast master. Ebisu said the boy was very lucky, but for our protagonist, the capital was very far away, and he still had matters to resolve in that city. Since the frog was extremely curious, he asked several questions, and the Playboy replied that he would soon find out what it was about. Elsewhere, a woman with ample attributes, accompanied by beautiful and healthy twins, was surrounded by guards. This was the person our boy wanted to talk to, the widow of the lord of that city. As he approached her, one of the guards ordered him to stop and introduce himself immediately. Very politely, he complied and said that the widow always seemed sad, offering to help resolve any problem she had. The woman confided that she had lost a personal item and would be eternally grateful if it could be found. Another secret task was unlocked by our boy, who assured the widow that he would solve this. Back on the streets of the city, the frog asked the protagonist why he was walking around there since the widow had lost her item outside the city. Our boy replied that she wasn't looking for just any flower, which left the frog deep in thought. Willing to solve her problem, he went directly to a store, which led the frog to ask if he really wanted to spend money on that. It was a tool store, and the seller questioned whether there would be flowers in that place, but our boy knew that treasure chests were sold there. Indeed, those items were available, and inside them could exist precious objects like dragon bones. The seller wanted to know the price range he had in mind. Getting straight to the point, he made it clear that he wanted to buy the most expensive ones. The seller brought a chest worth 10,000 gold coins, but our protagonist warned that just one wouldn't be enough. Letting wealth speak louder, he informed the seller that he would buy all the available boxes. Faced with such an intense offer, the merchant began to sweat profusely. Thus, one by one, the boxes were opened. Several items were found by our protagonist, and an hour later, he was already at the last box. Our protagonist was anxious for this time to find the sought-after flower, and indeed, he found it. A beautiful flower with a crystallized appearance. In possession of the item, he could finally return to the widow. Elsewhere, the beautiful woman was taking a bath. Unfortunately, she believed that no one would be able to find the flower she had lost. But her maid, who was observing the bath from a distance, ready to provide the necessary assistance, said that the widow was very charming and that her luck would not fail. The conversation between the two was interrupted by a third woman who announced that a young man was outside and wanted to speak with her, informing that he had found the flower. The widow stood up startled, thinking that perhaps someone had indeed managed to recover the item. Outside, she was informed by the guard that the young man was the same one who had promised to help her. Politely, he presented her with a small chest, informing her that inside was the sought-after flower. As soon as she opened the box, she came across the crystal flower, and quite enthusiastically, she told the boy that she had been looking for it for a long time. And now, having been helped by him, she asked if he wanted some kind of reward, like money or artifacts. Showing that her years as a widow were taking a toll, the woman said that if he wasn't interested in money or artifacts, he would have to offer himself. Unfortunately, our protagonist was not expecting such an offer and ended up showing that he was not good with women, becoming extremely anxious. Trying to make amends, he explained that the widow had misunderstood him. All he needed from her was help to obtain citizenship in that place. Thanks to these actions, the system informed that his favorability with the widow increased by 20 points. She liked the boy's difficult demeanor and would certainly continue to insist on something. Calling one of her maids, she asked for the documents to be prepared as she would sign with her own seal, and our boy also made another request. He wanted to buy a property in the city. The widow realized that he no longer wanted to be a wanderer and that having a residence was a wise choice. In fact, our boy already knew exactly where he wanted to buy, but looking at the map of the land, the widow commented that that neighborhood was a bit undervalued. However, he asserted that he was confident in his decision and thanked the widow for the help received. Not even the little frog understood that, as the neighborhood where the boy was buying the land was completely undervalued. But our protagonist knew that soon that city would be attacked, and a good part of it would end up destroyed. Fortunately, the neighborhood that was currently undervalued would be spared and would soon become the most functional and valuable area of the city. After receiving the widow's help, our playboy managed to buy the land in the desired neighborhood. Now he had a large plot of land and a document confirming his citizenship, something truly very useful. The widow made it clear that from that moment on, he was a first-class citizen of the Dragon Empire. Not even the boy expected that. In fact, the frog, who was the mentor of wealth, said that there were warlords who could not achieve that title and that he had just won the lottery. He finally realized that the widow belonged to the nobility, which explained how she managed to help him in that way. Only then did he ask if she knew the beast tamer of the royalty, and the widow replied that that man was her uncle. She also wanted to know why the boy was looking for him. Our protagonist said he wanted to learn more about his profession, and the widow informed him that he should be in the capital of the empire. However, he was an eccentric and unpredictable man, but she would try to help him, which made the boy very grateful. Showing that her true intentions were still on the surface, the widow asked to be treated more informally, allowing herself to be called Sophia, as that was her name. Our boy increased his favorability with her even more, and his prestige due to citizenship grew significantly. Even the frog couldn't explain how the boy managed to gain such affection from such a beautiful woman. News of his deeds began to spread throughout the server, and now players realized that the protagonist was on another level. No one understood how he had obtained first-class citizenship, and some suspected he might even be a disguised developer. In the middle of one of the fields with nervous creatures was the clingy and toxic ex-girlfriend of the playboy, who noticed a familiarity with that name. Sitting on the ground, disappointed, she wished there was an elite player to help them, but until that moment, they had to work very hard to defeat even basic creatures. This comment left the whole team quite offended, saying that she wasn't very useful to them either. Immediately, her boyfriend jumped into the discussion to try to remedy the situation, but the conflict was already brewing and the toxic girl decided to abandon her companions. This left her boyfriend furious, as gaining levels would be even harder in a two-person team, but she didn't like being insulted. Getting straight to the point, he asked if she had managed to talk to that playboy, who for them was a source of money and would be a great help. The jerk insisted that she swallow her pride and try to get in touch. After all, money is always good. Since he insisted so much, she decided to call the boy who had already logged out of the game. Back in the real world, she wanted to give the playboy another chance and took the initiative to reach out again. She made a completely unrealistic proposal, saying that if she were helped, she would consider becoming his girlfriend. The girl believed that those poor and insincere words would be enough to awaken the playboy's generosity. 5 minutes passed, and by then she had not received any response. Only then did she realize that her message could not be delivered because she was not on his friends list. This only made the disgusting girl completely outraged, as she couldn't believe the protagonist had so much self-respect. She screamed, completely out of control, saying that from that day forward, the playboy would never have a chance with her. Completely oblivious to this suffering, the protagonist continued walking through the city. He finally found the shop he was looking for. Inside, he was informed that the available items were all of silver level or higher. If he was looking for something cheaper, he should go elsewhere. Revealing an extremely valuable gold-level item, our protagonist asked if the seller could evaluate it. It was the Pendant of Night, whose effect was unknown. Even the seller didn't expect this. He then informed the player that the shop owner would evaluate it personally, and the protagonist wanted to know what the success rate of the analysis was. The seller replied that he was very talented and had an 80% success rate. To evaluate that item, he would charge 100 gold coins, and our protagonist simply tossed the money onto the table. Surprising the seller even more, the boy placed several items of the same quality to be evaluated. After a thorough examination, it was discovered that the pendant increased spirit by 40 points and strength as well, in addition to raising the shadow magic attribute by 20%. These were extremely impressive stats, but our boy wanted to know what the other items could do too, and was in a hurry. Our protagonist left the shop very satisfied after all the evaluations, and even his stats improved significantly. The frog said that with the playboy's current strength, he could fight alone, but he was curious to know what they would do soon. Since he hadn't heard from Sophia, he decided to head to the forest to gain levels. He went directly to a region recommended for level 20 players, which was a bit risky. In just a few seconds, our protagonist encountered several level 21 hyenas. But eager to gain levels, he sent the winged salamander to attack. There was nothing those poor animals could do against the furious salamander's fire breath. Our protagonist watched everything while calmly sipping a cup of coffee. After all, the salamander was doing all the hard work. This made him remember the days of his past life when he had to make the same effort to earn rewards. After 2 hours of doing absolutely nothing, our protagonist reached level 12, which was truly impressive. If he continued at that pace, he would reach level 20 in just a few days. Amid the bodies of those creatures, our playboy noticed a scroll. He had obtained the fireball spell, and it would be interesting for a beast tamer to be able to use it. Since knowledge is never too much, he decided to learn the technique. He used his new magic against the first living creature he encountered. The hyena was hit by the impact but lost only a negligible amount of health. Our protagonist realized that his attack power was humiliatingly reduced, which made the frog laugh with joy. In any case, he had been online for a long time, so it was time to return to the real world. Knowing what had happened in the past, he was sure that soon the world would know the true potential of the game. In the real world, the sky was dark, and it seemed that a cataclysm was approaching. Several people received the news that they were entering the apocalypse. No one knew exactly what that meant. All were transported to the game world. Among them, many were confused, and some believed they were dreaming. Among these people was the annoying girl who sought to exploit our protagonist, just like her companion. Indeed, the apocalypse had changed the world. Quite worried, a third guy wanted to know if the toxic girl had managed to talk to the playboy, but she was already completely outraged because she had been rejected by him, which is why she wished for our protagonist to die a painful death. Convinced of her exceptional beauty, she decided to try to seduce the most famous player on the server. That day, all players over 16 were forced to participate in the game. The option to return to the real world disappeared. It was no longer possible to leave voluntarily. The place they appeared in was based on the real world, and each virtual village represented a region of the planet. Those who died in that world could not return. Chaos ensued. Some players knew that our protagonist was the only one at such a high level at that moment. Many were discovering in the worst possible way that there was no return to the real world. A man of important appearance showed concern about the situation. He wanted to know what the best player was doing, precisely our beloved playboy. Since he was already at level 12 and had abandoned the beginner's village, no one could say where he was. This left the gray-haired man furious. A subordinate named Chen should know where the protagonist was since he had tested the beta version of the game, but Chen was only at level 4. Now the man was sure that our protagonist was not an ordinary person and needed to be found at all costs. Living his life peacefully, our boy received a message to return to the Duke's lands. After all, he had information about the task he was executing. Our protagonist became anxious because he did not expect to receive news about the beast tamer so quickly. Once again, he met with the widow, the kind Sophia. She was very excited to see that beautiful youthful face, saying that she had missed him. The words of that woman left him quite embarrassed. Our boy had no natural defenses against the advance of a woman like her, so he got straight to the point, asking if she had news about the beast tamer, and the widow informed him that her uncle was traveling and could not return yet. Disappointed, our playboy thought it had been a false alarm. However, the beast tamer had told Sophia how to unlock the secret profession. It was not a difficult task, and could be done within the city. Our boy was thrilled because he believed he would need to travel to the ends of the world. Now he wanted to know what needed to be done. Sophia said it could be a bit laborious since he would have to go to the mountains outside the city where a powerful dragon lived. However, that place had already been visited by our protagonist. Sophia asked if he was familiar with that dungeon, and a bit awkwardly, he replied that he had heard of it, although the truth was that in his past life, he had passed through that place several times. He even knew that there was a level 80 boss creature there, but Sophia's uncle had assured her that the true boss of that place was a dragon. Since the information did not match his memories, our protagonist said he would check personally, which left Sophia worried. After all, that area required level 80, and he was going alone and unprepared. Very confident, our playboy stated that he had his own way of doing things. All he needed was to pay the right amount, and even a dragon could be defeated. He also had someone to help him with that. Using his emblem, he said he would call Sister Tao, which impressed Sophia with the fact that he possessed such an item. And as expected, the conjurer appeared, wanting to know who had summoned her. She quickly recognized the protagonist and asked if he had missed her, and changing the subject, the playboy explained that they had a new task. Very worried, the conjurer wanted to know if it was another dragon, and indeed, that was exactly what they needed to face. Frightened, she wanted to know if the boy had any personal hatred against this type of creature since the last time he had hurt his back and had not yet recovered. But the protagonist stated that he would make the same deal, 2 billion as a reward. Even though it was a tempting offer, the woman said she really needed to recover. Then the boy mentioned that he could share with her the location of the sacred spirit spring. That immediately excited her because that dragon was very important, and she wanted to meet it without delay. Apparently, our protagonist finally managed to strike a deal with her to defeat the dragon. The conjurer was eager to know where the sacred spirit spring was located. Our protagonist explained that it was in the Lost Lands. Watching him from afar, Sophia realized that he was not a conventional player. Her favorability with him was increasing more and more, and certainly, her days of widowhood spoke loudly in her heart. Back in the beginner's village, the extras were in dire straits, suffering greatly. Some were beginning to realize that dying in that game was truly fatal, and that there was no way to return. Meanwhile, our protagonist was approaching the mountains surrounding the city. The frog would never imagine that a creature as fearsome as a dragon could be there. Their strategy was to avoid any unnecessary conflict until they encountered the dragon. Looking at the sky, they could already see the immense winged creature. The conjurer became worried because the strategy would have to be executed very well, but our protagonist informed her that they would not be detected because the entrance to the dungeon was right below them. When they came across a valley, the conjurer realized he was correct. They finally found the access to the dungeon. However, upon examining the inscriptions, the woman noticed another problem, that teleportation magic was powerful, but there were no traces of mana. Approaching the rock, the playboy said he had the solution. He made a cut on his hand, and through his own blood, he managed to activate the magical portal, leaving the conjurer very impressed. After all, he had opened those stone doors that had no energy at all. Now it was time to enter the dungeon. The conjurer was intrigued by the vast knowledge the protagonist had about it. The system immediately informed that the place was extremely dangerous and that he should proceed with caution as the labyrinth was filled with evil creatures. Moreover, they only had 3 hours to complete the task. The last time he was there, the limit was 3 days. Something had changed. Our protagonist warned his companion that this mission was even more dangerous than the one with the dragon, but she was determined to earn her reward, and she was offended to realize that our protagonist thought she was scared. In any case, they needed to move quickly, and as they entered a hall, our playboy asked if she was capable of using concealment magic. Once again, she was offended because that type of magic was very basic. She hadn't even bothered to learn about it when she was a novice. Our protagonist made it clear that he needed to conceal their presence in that place. Still, the conjurer cast the concealment magic. After all, that was child's play for her. Sharing the type of creature they might encounter in that labyrinth, the playboy emphasized that they should be cautious, which made the woman even more offended. The truth was that he had passed through that place over 800 times, which is why he knew so much about the labyrinth, increasing the conjurer's suspicion. In another hall, they encountered several creatures and needed to pass by them without raising suspicion. Our protagonist was the first to act, asking the conjurer to pay close attention to what he would do. With great skill, he passed by the creatures without drawing attention. The woman didn't know how a novice managed to deceive a level 60 creature so easily, so she did exactly as he ordered. When they came across another hall, the playboy said they needed to prepare for combat. Observing the large creature guarding the chest, she realized that things were different. The guardian of that labyrinth was a powerful creature. The conjurer noticed that it was a level 100 boss. Our protagonist would focus on opening the chest while his assistant would take care of the enemy. They could not be reckless in that place, or they would have serious problems. Stealthily, the playboy managed to reach the treasure, and once opened, he realized that the reward was also different. As soon as he did that, the creature noticed the presence of an intruder. But before it could attack, the protagonist's body was completely frozen. The conjurer told the playboy to run immediately. Our boy dashed away in desperation, calling for help as the creature broke free from the ice. Showing her combat skills, the woman performed a magical formation, and then unleashed lightning towards the labyrinth's boss. Our protagonist obtained a mysterious scroll and a cooldown stone capable of resetting the cooldown time of any item. The little frog, seeing that, realized how immense the boy's luck was. In possession of that item, our protagonist contemplated unfathomable horizons. The conjurer wanted to know if they would face the enormous creature or if they would flee. The playboy assured that they needed to fight, which left the woman quite enthusiastic. She unleashed her lightning once again against the abyssal monster. The creature became completely furious. Our protagonist did not expect her to scream so impetuously, a sign that she was out of control. Only then did he realize that the scream had summoned an even more terrible creature. The hall was invaded by a furious dragon that was there to deal with the invaders. Flames erupted dangerously, and all our protagonist could do was run. The conjurer did not know how that monster had managed to summon a dragon, but there was no time to discuss. Meanwhile, the furious monster continued to approach them. Our protagonist decided to confront the enemy, which left his companion quite worried. Thanks to the cooldown stone and the emblem of brutality, his firepower was elevated. He then pointed the emblem at the enemy, taking away a completely insignificant amount of health from it. Evidently, combat was not really one of our dear protagonist's skills. Only then did they realize that the enemy was deeply agonizing. The damage inflicted on its body reached almost 1,000,000 points. When the target's health was below 20%, the instant death effect was activated. And by defeating a level 100 creature, our boy jumped directly to level 20. Those watching everything from the sidelines were the conjurer, who could not believe the potential of that rookie. Moreover, all the other players were informed of the protagonist's feat as he received recovery and extra attributes. No one believed he could accomplish all that in such a short time. The news about him spread throughout the city, and several players were already idolizing the protagonist. Others, however, believed he was cheating, as his feats were inexplicable. Returning to the labyrinth, our protagonist realized they needed to flee since the whole place was collapsing. For the escape to happen, the conjurer opened a portal. They had to abandon the rewards because survival was the priority. In a few seconds, the whole place came down, leaving only destruction. But they managed to get outside safely, and the conjurer revealed that it had been a long time since she had faced such great danger. Only then did they realize they were celebrating too early. A huge dragon was flying above their heads and seemed completely furious. That was a judgment dragon, and the conjurer knew there was no way to defeat it. Once again, all they could do was run to preserve their lives. Fortunately, they managed to return to the city, and Sophia was impressed by the boy's feats. Recognizing that he was truly amazing and convinced by the compliments, the playboy said it was nothing special, but the frog made it clear that they had almost died. In possession of the scroll, our protagonist wanted to know what he needed to do to unlock the secret profession. After analyzing it, Sophia explained that it was not a class change scroll. In fact, it unlocked the hidden potential of whoever discovered it. Confused about this, Sophia asked him to follow her. She took the boy to a room where a man was already waiting for them. This was the royal beast tamer, the person our protagonist had been searching for. Politely greeting him, the playboy said he was there to unlock his secret profession. The beast tamer believed that method had disappeared but realized he was mistaken. Now he would help the protagonist in his transition. The playboy was anxious about what would happen. After all, that scroll would awaken the potential of his heart. All he needed to do was stay calm and not panic. He was immediately taken to another dimension where several blue spheres floated, so it seemed this was happening inside him. The beast tamer was shocked, saying that it was impossible. All 5 crystal spheres had been activated. Sophia, who also did not understand, asked if this was the supreme class transfer. And indeed it was true. Each of those spheres represented a potential. When he had changed professions before, he had only managed to awaken 3 of them. This was breaking the limits of humanity, as he had been able to do something unimaginable. And this only made our protagonist even more interesting to the widow. My God, she was certainly having needs. Finally, the protagonist achieved the class transfer. He was now a dragon enchanter and also able to speak with them. The stats he received were truly impressive, but unfortunately, I won't waste my time reading each one of them. One of the awakened classes was that of the legendary beast god, which left that poor NPC quite surprised. Our protagonist also received the blueprint for exclusive items, all starting at the epic level. But the problem was that the materials needed to craft them were extremely rare. Once the class transfer was completed, he thanked the old man, who told him that his potential had no limits. Even the little frog agreed with that. Our boy felt he was destined to be the pinnacle of humanity. In the place where the guardian of challenges stood, some extras presented themselves. Those three seemed to be very well equipped. The guardian wanted to know at what level they would attempt. The man with protagonist syndrome said he would take the test at abyssal difficulty. The guardian was surprised that another brave soul had appeared, but the extra assured him that he lived to face challenges. Outside, the girls would wait for good news about the conclusion of that challenge. Meanwhile, the guardian of the place thought those visitors from another world were really strange. After 5 minutes, the man returned desperate, asking for help and saying that the interior of that challenge was terrifying. His body was covered in wounds, and he had barely managed to escape with his life. Our protagonist was carefully analyzing what the other players were commenting on the server. For now, he didn't want them to discover his true identity, as his dedication was completely focused on leveling up. While he relaxed peacefully, the fire salamander was defeating enemies. Little by little, the dragon was becoming more powerful. There was no enemy that could surpass him in the hunting fields. Thanks to his most recent victory, our playboy obtained some very interesting items. Before he could analyze them further, another creature appeared. A large stone giant was ready to crush the boy's skull. This was a boss creature of abyssal level, and the data about it was unknown. But the boy would not flee from the fight. He and the salamander were ready to deliver some violence. Back to the extra who attempted the challenge at the highest difficulty, we found out that unfortunately, he was no longer with us. The poor thing was isekai'd. Those other players did not believe that our protagonist had managed to complete the challenge at abyssal difficulty. To them, it could only be some kind of cheat. But the truth is that the game made an official announcement regarding his achievement. In fact, our protagonist repeated the feat once again. That creature he defeated had not appeared before him by chance. Our protagonist realized that no item had appeared after his victory, only more fragments of the abyss. The truth is that he still didn't know what those fragments were for, but he imagined they could be used to craft something valuable. Since he had more important things to do, he didn't dwell on the subject at that moment. It was time to return. Upon crossing the portal, he was immediately greeted by the warriors, for he had completed the challenge once again, and it was time to receive his reward. Our boy obtained an epic-level crystal. It possessed great power and could strengthen the emblem of courage. And that was exactly what he did. He discovered that the emblem of courage had leveled up to legendary, becoming truly impressive. In the company of the fire salamander and his emblems, our playboy became completely unstoppable in the level 30 player area. Only then was he informed about the system maintenance and that he would soon have to return to the real world. Everyone in the game did not know why this was happening, but many wished to return to their original world. At the same time, everyone was transported to the outside world. As soon as they arrived in the real world, news about the incident began to circulate across the planet. People were in a panic. Among them, promising players rose up as if they were heroes. Our protagonist observed a report about one of those extras. He had never heard that name in his past life. From all indications, that extra was the first to overcome the challenges after the protagonist. He identified himself as a lucky man, and moreover, he had not done it alone. Bringing answers for everyone, he also informed that surviving within the game was far from easy. They also knew that our protagonist had been a player since the beta and had cleared the Abyssal Challenge Tower twice. For that extra, the protagonist's potential was truly impressive. There was no one who could compare to him. A man who was also watching the news seemed disappointed as he wished to have a subordinate like our boy, and he decided to use all the resources he had to discover the true identity of the protagonist. Calmly at home, the boy was disappointed as he was still in the game world. Apparently, he could return to the apocalypse as soon as he slept. The game's invasion of the real world was happening more slowly than last time. But this gave him the perfect opportunity to increase his power since upon reaching level 30, he could recruit another creature for his team. Back in the hunting fields, he ordered the fire salamander to attack as if it were a Pokemon master. The creature used Sonic Wave, which was nothing more than a deafening scream. The blow was extremely effective against those stone monsters. With the victims paralyzed, the salamander used Flamethrower. That was also super effective in completely destroying their enemies. As they were dedicating themselves to training, both were already at level 24. The other players were informed about the protagonist's progress, who remained at the top. That same promising extra believed it would be harder to gain levels as they advanced, but he was mistaken. The distance between him and our boy was 14 levels, and his name was really complicated. I will just call him Glasses Guy. At least his companions seemed humble and recognized that the protagonist was on a completely different level. Even so, they were willing to keep pushing themselves. Near the beginner village, a couple of dragons were talking because one of their eggs had been missing for days. One of them was the dragon prophet and carried the fate of the entire race. The red-skinned dragon said that our protagonist had a repulsive aura to them. His companion, however, thought he was talking about the cursed gods, which would be impossible since the human form couldn't withstand that much divine power. But the dragon prophet claimed he saw beyond what his companion could see, and that he would be willing to entrust the future of his race to this mortal, which left the black dragon furious. With no time to lose, they decided to fly toward the boy. Soon darkness will transcend space and time itself, devouring everything that exists. The human is their only hope. After saying these words, the prophet asked the black dragon to follow him, but he was still skeptical about our protagonist's potential. The glasses-wearing player finally managed to reach Windleaf City. He was with his companions, and they were the first players after our protagonist to achieve something like this. It didn't take long for them to look up at the sky and see the great dragons flying over the city. Our boy was captured by the prophet and desperately called for help, but the frog knew there was no one capable of rescuing him that way. On the ground, the players revealed they had never seen anything so grand. Moreover, it was bizarre that the protagonist had been captured by one of them. Not even level 100 players could engage with such dangerous creatures. Following the Judgment Dragon would certainly be a terrible decision. Before long, news spread among the players about the dragon's appearance and what he had done to the boy. Some were surprised that the playboy was already interacting with dragons. For them, that was why his level was so high compared to the others. Now in an isolated and mysterious place, our protagonist was gathered with the winged creatures. Looking closely at them, he had no idea why they seemed so familiar to him. The frog had already warned him not to get involved with such creatures. Completely terrified, the playboy was sure that this would be his last day alive. The dragons must have been there to seek revenge for the stolen egg. The black dragon approached and asked if the mortal was not afraid. Resisting as much as he could, the playboy said he preferred to be finished off since there was nothing to be done. It was then that the dragon prophet revealed that he didn't need to be afraid, because the dragon inside the egg he had stolen was the last hope of the entire race. Our protagonist wanted to know if they were talking about the salamander. Referring to the dragon this way made the black dragon extremely furious, as that was a cursed name for such a majestic creature. Once again, the prophet reminded them that there was no time to waste and that they needed to get straight to the point. The two creatures began to fly, seeming to perform a great enchantment. Even more scared, our protagonist didn't know what they were trying to do. A mysterious magical energy emerged from the dragon statue that was there. The power was absorbed by the statue's eyes. Our protagonist was receiving the blessing of the dragon clan, and now he possessed a part of their power as well. A month had passed since that event, and in the game forum, our protagonist became a hot topic. Until then, no one could say what had really happened since he disappeared after being kidnapped by a dragon. Some speculated that he might have allied with the creatures to gain levels. Many believed he was still cheating and that he might never return. Lying on the ground, our protagonist felt an intense headache. He didn't know what had happened. Now standing, he also couldn't tell where he was, but everything indicated it was the level 40 hunting ground. Despite having received all those blessings from the power of the dragons, he felt no changes in his body. Only then did he realize he had a skill called Money Shield. 100 gold coins could be converted into 1 shield point. Currently, he had almost 2 billion. In addition to being an extremely interesting skill, the shield blocked all damage received within the limit of money he possessed, being immune to any type of break. However, the money was consumed along with the damage. He decided to check what his beast control skills were. He realized that now there was no limit to the creatures he could tame. Even the royal beast tamer could only have 3 creatures. That gift the protagonist received was truly incredible. Completely grateful to the dragons that appeared in his life, he began to thank them for everything they had done for him. He finally returned to the challenge hall to undertake the level 30 challenge. As he was already known, the guards asked if he was coming to attempt it at the usual difficulty. Immediately, a portal opened, revealing the passage he would have to follow. Showing him the way, the guard wished him luck this time. Unlike other opportunities, the playboy was taken to a frozen dimension. As he crossed the snowstorm, he complained about the cold as he was not prepared for it. Only then did he realize that some kind of magical energy was approaching. By a narrow margin, our boy managed to dodge it. The frog wanted to know why he had dodged the attack since he could have used his shield. A few seconds later, a huge ice giant appeared to execute the playboy, and once again, giving orders to his Pokemon, the playboy asked the salamander to burn the enemy. His first attack was extremely effective, completely defeating that frozen mutant, which could do nothing against the salamander's flames. Although worried, our protagonist found the ease of that battle strange. Only then did he realize that the fire salamander possessed incredible abilities. It was certainly a creature far beyond the potential of any other. Shortly after that, several other monsters appeared in that frozen dimension. Our protagonist asserted that this was the chance for the salamander to show its true power. To the creature's delight, it could act according to the iniquity of its own heart. In half an hour, there was no enemy left that could withstand the power of its heat. As they concluded that too quickly, the playboy began to mock the difficulty since all that had appeared were weak creatures, and once again, for having accomplished something incredible, the entire server was informed of the greatness of the boy's deeds. Some were happy because, as he had been missing for a long time, they had come to believe he was dead. A generic extra was eager to go to the city and meet the protagonist in person in hopes of one day becoming his subordinate. Outside the challenge hall, our boy now possessed 3 fragments of the Abyssal Stone. He had also received the Radiant Hero Stone, a very rare material capable of strengthening the heroic emblem he carried. Finally, he said goodbye to the guard who was securing the hall. Back in the city center, he noticed it was much busier, and the frog revealed that they had been away for many days. It was time to take the items for evaluation, but outside the shop several players were waiting. Pushing ahead of everyone, the protagonist asked for his items to be evaluated, but the old man initially ignored him. Only then did he realize who he was dealing with, and in a very polite manner, he treated the protagonist well, asking him to come in immediately. This treatment obviously left the other players outraged just because he was a first-class citizen. Ignoring the complaints, the old man asked if that was the heroic emblem. Strengthening that item would not be easy, and if he ruined the process, serious problems could arise, which left the boy worried. Even so, the old man began to hammer away. He successfully strengthened the protagonist's item, which was now at the legendary level. Since it was not the first item of this category that the playboy owned, he was not surprised. Only then did the players outside realize they might be in the presence of the most famous player. Everyone tried to enter the shop to meet him, but were stopped by the old man. Taking the opportunity, the protagonist placed other items that also needed strengthening. Observing the quality of all that, the extras were surprised, as they had never seen anything like it in all their time playing. As the boy was an anonymous celebrity on the server, it didn't take long for news to spread on the forum about what had happened in that shop. Several people tried to approach the location in hopes of meeting him. Fortunately, the playboy managed to shake off everyone. Even so, it was an agonizing experience. What he didn't expect was that the extra who wanted to be his subordinate would finally manage to find him. For all intents and purposes, I will call him the mobster from now on. Our protagonist asked what that man wanted with him, and the mobster assured him that he had not come to threaten him, only to discuss business. Very interested in the money that could arise from this deal, the protagonist wanted to know if he wished to buy the gold-level items he possessed. After all, it's impressive how this protagonist always has a pointed nose. No matter the scene, he always appears with a huge nose. However, those items were not cheap. They would cost millions of gold coins. Then the mobster revealed that the boy was currently trapped in the game's reality. In fact, revisiting his memories of the past, the protagonist did not remember that man. On the other hand, the presence of a masked assassin seemed somewhat suspicious since he was indeed familiar to him, as he had always acted alone in his past life. The mobster revealed that he saw great potential in the protagonist, but apparently, he still lacked certain things, especially elements from the real world. Our protagonist feigned interest in the conversation just to see how far the mobster would go. The man said he could guarantee him all kinds of dreams, money, women, everything he desired. That's why he should make a wise choice at that moment. Placing his hand on the mobster's shoulder, our protagonist thanked him for recognizing his skills. But that confident attitude from the mobster irritated him, so he decided to teach him a lesson to make him understand what true knowledge was. The mobster was startled to see the fireball, and couldn't believe he was being attacked. Our protagonist hit him, removing almost 4,000 hit points. This left all the mobster's subordinates excited. However, they could not retaliate as it was forbidden to attack players within the city. Leaving the location, our protagonist said that those items were compensation for what he had done, asking not to be disturbed in the future. In a few seconds, sirens began to sound, and the extras waited anxiously for what would happen. Several guards sprang from the ground, asking who had done that and ordering everyone not to move. The head guard commented that the wrongdoer must be crazy. Without thinking twice, our protagonist took responsibility for his actions. But the head guard reconsidered his words. After all, he was dealing with a first-class citizen and ended up apologizing. Our protagonist replied that it was nothing serious. He had just been threatened by some useless people and asked the guards to clean up that mess. Knowing that the protagonist had been offended, the guard apologized, saying he had to ensure the safety of all citizens, especially of real citizens. The other players watching that were left speechless. Then the head guard released his men. But one of them wanted to know why the protagonist hadn't been arrested. The chief explained that they needed to pay attention to the details. That man had approached a first-class citizen. Causing problems for him could be fatal for both. After all, the scene shifted to the Duke's house, where the extremely attractive widow lived. She was anxious for news about the boy. Finally, one of her maids appeared bringing news that warmed not only the widow's heart but other parts of her body as well. At the resurrection point, the mobster was outraged by what had happened. He acknowledged that he had lost his composure and admitted that they were no match for what the protagonist was capable of doing in the game. He ordered the assassin to return to the city and recover the lost items, but the protagonist surprised everyone by revealing that he hadn't taken that equipment. Apparently, those men wouldn't need them anymore. Completely shocked, the mobster wanted to know what the protagonist was doing there, since that was a heavily monitored area. Raising his staff, the playboy said he would remove the problem at its root. He hit the mobster once again with a fireball. Now that he had been put to sleep forever, his companions were terrified. Our protagonist said that taking one life, two, or even more, made no difference, so it was better for them to be cautious. Since that was the resurrection area, the mobster came back to life once again. Not understanding why he was being targeted with such retaliation, he stated that in the real world he would make the protagonist pay for everything. Hitting him again, the playboy replied that those threats were useless. It didn't take long for the confrontation to attract the attention of other extras. Meanwhile, the mobster was supported by his lackeys. In the midst of all the commotion, a division of guards appeared to investigate. The assassin believed that the protagonist would not escape the judgment of the black-robed judge, and that he would finally have problems. Our protagonist knew that facing an NPC of that caliber would be extremely problematic. Going to the ground, he once again took responsibility for what he had done, stating that he would accompany the judge. The magistrate ordered the guards to take him away. In the real world, the mobster was lying in his bed, and the butler was desperate. Approaching the mobster's body, an old man appeared wanting to know what had happened. Then he was informed that his son was no longer among the living, which awakened an immense fury within him. Back in the game, the playboy was being judged. They wanted to know why he had broken the laws of that place. Our protagonist revealed that he had been intimidated and threatened by that group, which is why he needed to defend his dignity. Some jurors did not like the justification, claiming that he had been too violent. But the judge ordered everyone to be silent, declaring that the protagonist would be sentenced to lifelong exile from that city. Our protagonist accepted his punishment until a person entered the room saying that he had acted in self-defense. It was the widow, who also stated that the sentence was very unfair. Her presence intimidated the judge. Approaching the boy, the widow said that the playboy was her great friend and she would not like him to be treated unfairly. Immediately, the judge reconsidered his decision, realizing that he had been too harsh. He freed the protagonist on the spot. With everything resolved, the widow asked if they could leave, and the judge allowed it. She immediately requested that the playboy accompany her. Once outside, the boy thanked her for everything, but the widow made it clear that this time it was nothing special. She mentioned that she had heard he had been captured by a dragon and sent people to search for him everywhere. The young man replied that that kidnapping had actually been a disguised blessing from which he managed to benefit. Not knowing exactly what it was about, the widow asked him to accompany her to her house to show him everything she had achieved. In fact, he also wanted to go to her house because he wished to speak with the widow's uncle. She was surprised that he had already reached level 30. Indeed, he did not stop growing in her eyes. Reunited once again with the old man, he said he was impressed with the protagonist's potential. As the mission to obtain a second profession was still ongoing, the playboy took the opportunity to ask for guidance. Unfortunately, the answer was harsh. Even traversing the entire continent, he would find no clues. The domain of the gods was very mysterious. Worried, the widow wanted to know if he would be able to complete the mission, but her uncle believed that soon the young man would discover something. The protagonist even expressed his desire to go to the Lost Temple. Surprised, the old man asked if he knew the location of that place. Our boy replied that he had heard about it and knew it was the most mysterious location of the entire apocalypse. Knowing that he had knowledge of the existence of that place, the widow became increasingly enchanted with the promising and extremely fertile young protagonist. The system informed him that he had accepted the secret mission to find the Lost Temple, and the playboy understood that he would need to be very cautious from then on. He bid farewell to the widow, promising that they would see each other again in the future. The frog wanted to know if he had at least a clue about the location of the temple, but the boy replied that he had more important things at the moment, as the first invasion of the apocalypse would happen the next day. A portal from another world would open, and countless creatures from other dimensions would invade the area. The cities would be massacred and the buildings destroyed. The frog was frightened to hear this, imagining it was just a joke. Knowing he would need help, the boy opened a portal to summon the powerful conjurer. Since it was the third time they had met for a task, she was already apprehensive, as every time she was summoned by him, the problems were enormous. She believed he had found another dragon's nest, but the boy asked her to relax. After all, they were not going anywhere. Even so, she remained worried, certain that there must be some trap in the protagonist's proposal, but he assured her he was serious. All he wanted was for her to protect his property for an entire day. The proposal seemed too good to be true, and she even thought she was being deceived by the boy. Still, she accepted the job and guaranteed that she would appear at the agreed location at night, which was excellent for the protagonist. Outside, the frog realized that she had been deceived, but the playboy did not care. He needed to continue leveling up and strengthening himself for what was to come. In the game forum, people were unhappy with what he had done in a player's life. The protagonist noticed that more and more people were engaging in the task of discovering his true identity. Having played enough, he decided it was time to sleep and rest a bit. Unexpectedly, several people were brought into the game even while awake in the real world, and they immediately became worried. Our boy noticed that the conjurer was already there, a sign that she was extremely punctual. He also stated that soon all his properties in that neighborhood would be under her protection. The woman retorted, saying she was not as useless as a stone because she was there to work. While they were talking, several lightning bolts cut through the sky of that city. Worried, the playboy asked the conjurer to use a protection spell, but she didn't know what she was seeing. She finally noticed the dimensional rift and the creatures invading the city. All those monsters were about to cause great destruction. The guards alerted everyone because an invasion was happening. In just a few minutes, the city was already being devastated and people were being attacked. The conjurer realized that the protagonist already knew this would happen. To avoid revealing the truth, the playboy merely said she needed to believe in her potential to protect her property. Among those creatures, a level 100 boss monster emerged, proof that she had fallen into yet another trap. Every time she associated with the protagonist, she ended up suffering greatly. Still, willing to fulfill the agreement, she began to attack the great monster. With a single blow, she managed to knock it down. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough, as another equally colossal creature appeared right after. Looking at the protagonist, the conjurer asked him to help in the fight as well. And that's what he did, sending the salamander to eradicate the enemies. Behind the city walls, a large creature roared, trying to intimidate the citizens. Inside, the mages responsible for the defense were already struggling to hold their ground. Fortunately, something even worse for that creature was able to take its life. It was the protagonist's dragon, which ended up being reprimanded. After all, it needed to be more cautious. It had almost burned the entire city. A large wave of monsters was rapidly advancing against them. The winged salamander took off, determined to eradicate all those who posed a danger. The protagonist was gaining several levels from that battle since the creatures were extremely powerful. Pulling away, he asked the conjurer to defend that sector of the city as he would go to another point, which made her quite furious. Examining the bodies of the creatures, she noticed that several epic-grade items were being left behind, and now she wished that the hired conjurer would work even harder. Outside the city, some people were trying to escape but were being chased by the beasts. A kind of Godzilla from AliExpress struck the shield of one of the players who was part of the glasses-wearing extras team. They were already overwhelmed. The man with the shield urged his companions to flee while there was still time, as he would try to hold the creature back, but he didn't have the strength for that, and ended up being easily defeated. This left the entire group quite vulnerable, as there was nothing they could do against that monster. In the last moment, the monstrosity was hit by a fire attack, falling before them completely lifeless. Only then did the glasses-wearing extra realize that the culprit was a baby dragon. Roaring, the small creature frightened all the other monsters, ending their existences with the heat of its flames. It was truly unbelievable that a dragon hatchling had such grand power. The protagonist passed by, calling the salamander to accompany him as there were still enemies to defeat. Finally, the group of that extra managed to identify the protagonist as the legendary player. The boy with glasses rushed over to him. The first thing he did was thank him, stating that they were only alive because of him, and assured that they would do anything he asked, even if it was risky. The protagonist said he was just passing through and stated that the eastern district of the city was already safe, recommending they head there. After those words, they were impressed by the playboy's kindness and decided to go to the safe location. Turning his attention back to the creatures, the protagonist realized that the weaker monsters would only waste his time. They needed to reach the city gates where the real battle was taking place. In the city, everything was on fire, but as he had said, the eastern district remained safe. Pointing to the horizon, the girl asked the glasses-wearing extra to look as well. The protagonist had just gained another level, and to everyone's surprise, he was already at level 35. As they faced this, a huge flaming object began to fall from the sky. It was a kind of meteor that struck the center of the city in a devastating manner. At the main gates, the playboy realized that a massacre had indeed occurred. Next to him was a skeleton king of unknown level. It would certainly be a tough battle. Nearby, other players were worried as the archers could no longer fight, and the healers were overwhelmed. wanting to abandon the front line. In light of the situation, the lord of the city ordered everyone to abandon their positions. Only then did he realize that the tide of battle was changing. Among them was a person of divine level, and surely that could change everything. The extremely talented conjurer was working for our protagonist, and her presence was a great help to everyone. However, she didn't like having to fight against such powerful creatures because even for her it was a bit difficult. But our boy wanted her help to become stronger too, and that was exactly what she did, granting blessings that increased his power. Since there were several other creatures in the way, the playboy asked her to help him reach the boss. Everything happened in a simple blink of an eye. All it took was for her to raise her staff for those poor, monstrous extras to be annihilated. This cleared the way for the big-nosed playboy to fulfill his mission. The lord of the city immediately approached her, thanking her for the help. The talented conjurer ordered everyone to head north as that district would be under her charge. Other people noticed that a level 30 beast tamer was trying to attack that powerful creature. However, the commander obeyed the conjurer's orders to abandon the area. Thus, our protagonist had a clear path to fight the huge monster alone. Completely terrified, the little frog wished not to be involved in that battle, as he valued his own life. It didn't take long for the enormous skeleton to spot our protagonist. He focused his attacks on the conjurer, who was also nearby. Meanwhile, the big-nosed one planned to use his emblem, activating the brutal massacre towards the creature. A great attack was executed, piercing the giant's bones. Immediately, the instant death effect was activated. The body of that colossal skeleton was dismembered. The little frog couldn't believe that the big-nosed one had managed to do that so efficiently. A message about his deeds was immediately shared with the entire server, and the other players could hardly believe it. The bespectacled extra was also very surprised because minutes before, the protagonist was with them, and now he had defeated a monstrous creature. Thanks to this, the protagonist also obtained some very interesting items. Inspecting them, he noticed that the level of those equipments was far superior to that of common creatures. The little frog also found a rare artifact, and the big-nosed one realized that his luck was indeed unusual. Those rewards were better than those from legendary-level tasks. After that brutal beating session, the creatures began to return to the portal from which they had come. The other players celebrated, relieved to have survived the ordeal. Elsewhere, the governor woke up from his nap, supposedly worried about the invasion, but the guard informed him that it had ended an hour earlier. The news surprised him, and he learned of the contribution of the big-nosed protagonist and the legendary conjurer. The governor did not expect there to be another person as talented as the conjurer in that place, and now he wished to meet him personally to express his gratitude. It didn't take long for the protagonist to be received by him, and to no one's surprise, the widow who greatly desired the big-nosed one was also present. The governor said he was quite relieved for the help received and, on behalf of all the citizens, offered his sincerest gratitude. The conjurer stated that the boy had contributed greatly to the victory. The protagonist replied that he hadn't done anything special while his favorability with the governor increased significantly. The conjurer informed that she would return to the temple as she had other matters to resolve, while the protagonist still had something to discuss. The widow, not understanding why she had been invited, listened as the governor explained that a large part of the city was in ruins except for a specific district where all the properties remained intact. He needed her help, but the widow explained that she could not make that decision. After all, most of the intact properties in the western district belonged to the boy, which left the governor quite surprised. Knowing that the governor wanted to buy them, the big-nosed playboy said he would sell them for the right price. Showing himself generous, the governor asked only that the boy name a number, as the bank would take care of the rest. The widow also asked for his help with something specific. The information about the event was going to the capital, and all the citizens had witnessed what the boy had done. Therefore, she would like to request the royal family to grant a title of nobility to the big-nosed one. That was indeed good news, and the little frog, who until then had done nothing, not being comic relief or mentor, just making generic comments, once again said that the boy was lucky. The governor fully supported the request, which made the widow quite happy. But deep down, he was already wondering if our boy was having some kind of relationship with that woman. After all, she was being too nice to him. However, he kept his thoughts to himself since our boy had helped the city a lot. Back in the real world, someone was suffering greatly. It was the extremely opportunistic girl who had once been part of our big-nosed protagonist's life. She was irritated because her current boyfriend was unreachable. Unfortunately, the one who was her boyfriend had departed for his own isekai, leaving her completely desolate. Desperate, she thought about turning to our protagonist, believing that he was still obsessed with her. Convinced that she was still deeply loved, she decided to use sincere excuses to make everything go back to how it was before. Leaving home, she intensely wished that our protagonist would be waiting for her. Within the game world, Many people wanted to move to our protagonist's city because it was very safe, increasing property values. Who was happy about this was our boy. After all he saw were gold coins going straight into his pocket. In the midst of that destruction, he went to meet the old blacksmith because he needed new equipment. The old man said it would be an honor to contribute to the boy's progress, but his shop had been destroyed. In light of this, the big-nosed boy asked him to follow along as he would show him a forge. In another neighborhood of the city, the old man was surprised by what he saw. Inside that place, he realized that the equipment was top-notch, and he didn't expect something so luxurious in the West District. The big-nosed boy said that the old man could be the owner of that shop since the place belonged to him, but had been empty for some time. Upon hearing this, the blacksmith was moved. Our protagonist stated that he didn't need the shop, but rather that his equipment be properly identified, carefully observing an item that looked like a pair of horns. The old man said he might not be able to identify it accurately since it was an artifact. Even so, since it was a request from the big-nosed boy, he would do his best. Despite his efforts, he couldn't complete the task, and the protagonist realized it would be more difficult than he thought. The blacksmith explained that no one in history had ever successfully identified an artifact. In light of this, the boy handed over the other simpler items. Going to the governor's building, the protagonist noticed that a man was being barred. He wanted to speak with the authority, but the governor was a busy man. As he approached the guards, the big-nosed boy received preferential treatment. Even though the governor was busy, he had free access to the office. Once again reunited with the governor, the big-nosed boy was received with enthusiasm. The man wanted to know what the boy desired. Our protagonist said he wanted to find the lost race. The governor explained that the legends about it were hundreds of years old, but still, the boy wanted to discover something new. What the protagonist really wanted was for the governor to put a reward for information, offering 5 million gold coins and rare equipment to anyone who brought clues. Realizing the importance to the boy, the governor agreed. After all, he was very grateful. The next day, the news was shared, and all the players were surprised by what had happened to the protagonist. He had already reached level 40, being the first to do so, receiving an epic item as a reward. The other players, upon hearing the news, were even more impressed. Now with so many levels gained, the boy went hunting in the area designated for level 40 players. A huge creature tried to attack him, and its blows were devastating. But using the money-powered shield, the big-nosed boy managed to defend himself. This opened the opportunity for the fire salamander to execute the enemy. The little frog, watching everything, commented that it was lucky for the protagonist to have the money shield, or he would have already gone to another isekai. Our protagonist, however, knew that his stats had increased significantly since the blessing of the dragon god. Thanks to this, he completed another challenge, obtaining another mysterious fragment. He wanted to know how many more would be needed to complete it. He was also surprised to discover that clues about the lost civilization were emerging. Several players were working on them in search of the reward, which is why things were advancing so quickly. Back in the governor's office, the protagonist went to seek news. A guard accompanied him outside, saying that there was a group of dwarves in the nearby forest that might be the race our boy was looking for. The big-nosed boy was surprised they had been so close all this time. The guard recounted that he had stumbled upon them during one of his patrols. If the invasion hadn't been contained by our protagonist, he certainly wouldn't have been able to return. Knowing that the protagonist was going there, the knight asked if he wanted an armed escort, but the big-nosed boy made it clear that he could do it alone. In the heart of the forest, several dwarves were gathered. Some players were lurking, trying to capture one of them alive, but the dwarves were not fools. One of them threw his hammer at a player, causing some damage, which initially made them laugh. Soon, however, they regretted it as they were electrocuted in a devastating manner. Other players witnessed this and were horrified. The dwarves already suspected the humans, who always seemed malicious. One of them told Thor that they shouldn't cross into this race's territory. He didn't like being treated like a circus animal, and if it weren't for his tribe, he would have been even crueler. Who was trying to find that people was our protagonist, following in the knight's footsteps. With so much movement, other players also noticed the boy walking through the forest. The knight warned that the dwarves were inside and that the big-nosed one needed to find them immediately. He also alerted him about their unpredictable temperament. When they finally found them, the big-nosed one dismissed the guard, stating that from then on he would do everything alone. The walking nose casually approached the dwarves, awakening the fury of one who thought he was dangerous. But the leader, Thor, asked for calm. The boy's appearance and calm demeanor made him reconsider. Taking a deep breath, they sensed the smell of a divine artifact on the boy and concluded that he carried more than one. The scent was so strong that they imagined the quality of the artifact surpassed even the divine level. It seemed something very ancient. Only then did they realize they were in the presence of the aura of a great deity accompanying our boy. The most impressive thing for those short men was that the big-nosed one was only level 40, but possessed incredible spiritual power. He was definitely blessed by the gods, which left them amazed. Other players observed the boy's approach to the dwarves and did not understand why they were not fighting. They imagined that the dwarves were traitors of their race, or that the protagonist had some hidden trick. Curious about the boy's presence, the dwarves wanted to know what he was doing there. Our protagonist said he needed their help. It was not to forge a weapon, but to find the lost temple, something the dwarves did not expect. Our boy made it clear that he was not a threat, but to advance his class, he needed to complete that task. For the dwarves, this was a sacred matter, and they could not speak of it with strangers, unless the boy proved his character. It was an interesting challenge, but since he needed their help, he showed the artifact he carried to be identified. Upon seeing the item, the dwarves were astonished by its quality. As the best craftsmen in the world, no task seemed difficult for them. Analyzing the pair of horns, they realized it was not a forged artifact. There were no signs that it had been manually created. Its quality was so high that it could be a naturally formed artifact. In other words, they were horns from the god of destruction, cut from the deity itself. Interested, they asked where the boy had obtained them, and the big-nosed one replied that he got them by melting a creature during the invasion. The dwarves could not believe he had gone to the dimension of the gods and defeated that creature. In any case, they confirmed they could evaluate the artifact, but it would cost a lot of money. Little did they know that money had never been a problem for the protagonist. The dwarf raised all the fingers of his hand, revealing that the price was 500 gold coins. For a simple evaluation, the big-nosed one thought it was expensive. In light of his hesitation, the dwarf offered a discount, charging 300 coins. But the protagonist said that if they could successfully identify the item, he would pay 1 million for each of them. An amount of money so exorbitant that the dwarves almost forgot how to speak from being so impressed. As proof of his generosity, he handed them 1,000 coins, saying he would send someone with supplies soon. This immediately increased his favorability with the dwarves, who now wished to identify this artifact without delay. After an hour of hard work, they finally succeeded. Those were the horns of the god of destruction, which increased strength, spirit, and vitality, among other extremely interesting attributes. Intrigued, the big-nosed one wanted to know if the item was truly related to the gods, and the dwarf wanted to know when he would receive the rest of the payment. Our protagonist needed to return to the city to collect it, and the dwarves never imagined they would enter a human city since they had never done so. However, the protagonist had other artifacts that needed the same work. In any case, they were excited because they liked to learn about new cultures. Once inside the city, the players were surprised, as several dwarves in swimsuits casually walked around. They also wanted to meet those talented craftsmen famous for making high-quality items. The first place the protagonist took the dwarves was to a restaurant where they could eat and drink to their heart's content. Everything was covered by the protagonist's money. Now that the dwarves were satisfied, the big-nosed one wanted to know more about the lost temple. He revealed an artifact capable of detecting the presence of the temple passed down through generations. With this, he might be able to find it. However, they recommended he forget that idea, since inside the lost temple was a creature whose existence was truly terrifying. This immediately sparked the boy's curiosity. He wanted to know what creature it was, but the dwarves had never seen it with their own eyes. Long ago, guided by the god of fire, they went to this temple. It was then that the creature appeared, and to imprison it, the god of fire created the fields of eternal flames, which no one could approach. Despite the dangers, the protagonist said that finding the temple was crucial for his career change, and the dwarf, impressed by his courage, decided to help. One of those items, the crystal, would serve to detect the temple if it were nearby. This crystal was called the Spirit of the King, while the compass would react to the presence of the temple. As soon as he received the items, the boy understood that they were of great quality. The crystal, in addition, protected against heat. He became very interested in the crystal, and if there were more, he would like to buy them. But the dwarf said he only had that one. There were other crystals of the same type, but of normal quality, much weaker. After analyzing them, the protagonist realized that they would not be enough, but it was all the dwarf had. In any case, he stated that he would think of a way to work around this situation, wishing that the dwarves enjoyed their meal. The little frog wanted to know what the boy would do about the fire temple. He replied that he needed to take that risk but would not do it alone. Far away, in her temple, the conjurer, with ample attributes and extremely symmetrical twins, was relaxing. She had changed her clothes and, looking at her reflection in the mirror, approved of the color change. But her moment was interrupted when a guard arrived, desperate, informing her that that person had just arrived. It was the protagonist. As soon as she saw him, she realized she would have problems. Disappointed, she asked if this time it was some hideous creature or a powerful dragon, leaving the boy embarrassed. She asked him to get straight to the point. The protagonist replied that he wished to find the fire temple. These words immediately worried her, as the boy seemed willing to provoke a god. She thought it could only be a joke. Trying to convince her, the boy said that the reward could be negotiated, but she seemed unyielding and assured him that she would never accompany him. Then the boy revealed the artifacts received from the dwarves, which at first she judged to be common. But upon holding the compass, she realized it had been made by dwarves. Now she wanted to know why he wished to go to such a dangerous place, discovering that it was about his class change. Faced with his determination, she asked for a week to prepare, but the boy informed her that time was scarce. They needed to leave immediately. The conjurer became worried because they hadn't even discussed her payment. It was then that the protagonist revealed that many treasures should be guarded in that place. Imagining the riches they could find, the conjurer immediately hurried to help him. 2 days of travel were enough for them to reach the incandescent lands. The place was so hot that the conjurer was sweating constantly. She could no longer bear it. But according to the compass's information, they were getting closer to their destination. In that place, various fire-adapted creatures existed, and all were dangerous. Since he was already tired, our protagonist asked the conjurer to take care of that. In the blink of an eye, she completely froze that evil monster. But that didn't seem to be enough. Several similar to that hideous fish appeared, and the conjurer didn't know why they were so numerous. Our protagonist noticed that the compass began to react intensely. Both were surprised by the emergence of a large portal. It definitely must not have appeared there for no reason. That could only mean one thing. It must be the door that leads to the fire temple. Now they needed to hurry because the monsters were approaching to attack. Trying to buy some time, the conjurer attacked those fish with her lightning. Meanwhile, our boy used his money shield to protect himself. He ran towards the portal because he needed to reach it immediately, asking the conjurer to bless him with speed. As she did this, our protagonist reminded her not to forget about her payment. Even using the protection of the crystal, our boy was still taking a lot of damage from the fish's attack. Fortunately, there were only a few meters left until the mysterious passage. Nothing would stop our boy now, not even the fury of a god. Finally, after crossing the gate, our boy was taken to a large hall. He immediately noticed that the temple seemed abandoned. A large stone statue asked the intruder what his purpose was in that place. Our protagonist, being very sincere, said he came to explore those ruins. Smiling, the statue said he needed its blessing to awaken his true potential and should kneel immediately. Our protagonist asked if the second-class change also required a blessing. The statue replied that he needed to thank it sincerely to receive its protection. The little frog did not like those words at all, as the statue seemed very suspicious. In light of the boy's insolence, the statue was even firmer, ordering him to kneel before the great god of fire, asserting that this was the greatest honor he could receive one day. Making flames rise from the ground, the statue asked for his sincerity once more. Thanks to this, our protagonist received significant damage from the fire. Irritated, our boy didn't care if he was talking to a god, as he also had a divine artifact in his hands. Moreover, he was accompanied by the fire salamander that had spontaneously appeared beside its master, sensing the smell of violence. It didn't take long for the creature to attempt to attack that statue. Proving to be truly powerful, it managed to inflict a damage of 100,000 points. It was as if the dragon's hatred for the gods was something impossible to control. Now, with its body quite damaged, the statue was furious with our protagonist, saying that he had made a great mistake since the demon sealed in that place would be unleashed. The system warned that our boy was being hit by a mysterious force and needed to leave immediately. Once again, flames erupted from the ground, causing our protagonist to worry. Now he realized that the god of fire could indeed have become enraged. A mysterious voice said that Hephaestus deserved to die. Our boy didn't know what was happening. After that furious shout, the entire ground shattered, causing our protagonist to fall into the unknown. During the fall, he lost an absurd amount of money due to the shield he possessed, finally landing on the ground and losing nearly 6 million coins in the process. Surrounded by flames, our boy tried to identify where he was, noticing that there was a creature a little distance away. That was the divine phoenix, owner of the mysterious voice he had heard earlier. All its data was unknown. Perhaps this was the creature sealed in the temple. In fact, it asked if our boy was responsible for destroying Hephaestus's statue. Imagining that the creature and the god were in conflict, he confirmed that he had indeed destroyed the statue. The phoenix recommended that he leave the temple while he still could. Otherwise, he would have problems when Hephaestus arrived. Our protagonist didn't imagine that Hephaestus would return, but the phoenix assured him it was true. Once the statue was broken, the god would awaken. The creature also said that it would soon break those shackles, which intrigued our protagonist. He wanted to know why the creature was sealed. Completely furious, the phoenix revealed that it had been deceived. It was ambushed while weak, giving birth to its children. Very interested in these creatures, our protagonist asked where the babies were, as he could save them. The phoenix warned that the big-nosed one was being completely deceived by his own greed, as the phoenix's blood could not be tamed. Our protagonist made it clear that he hadn't come there to entertain this creature, asking the fire salamander to show what it could do. As soon as she saw the dragon, the phoenix was left speechless, as it should be impossible for a human to tame it. Finally, she realized that the ancient dragon god must have chosen a human, being the only possible explanation. Now, out of patience, our boy wanted to know where the phoenix's offspring were. Believing this was part of destiny, she handed him one of her feathers, as it would serve as a compass in that sea of fire. Our protagonist was very excited about the possibility of having another mythical creature by his side, but the little frog made it clear that he was celebrating too early, as they still needed to cross all that fire. It was then that our protagonist realized the vastness of lava surrounding him, but if it was to find a mythical creature, he was willing to enter that fire. Fortunately, the crystal's protection prevented 95% of the damage caused by the flames. Walking over them, it was only a short distance before our boy finally reached his destination. He found a large phoenix egg atop a chalice. This was the true reward he had come to seek. Once in possession of the egg, the big-nosed one began to get quite excited. As soon as he took it out of the chalice, another mysterious voice emerged, asking who was there. Next, our boy ended up being hit, and even his shield couldn't withstand that impact. From the lava, a large hand emerged, leaving the little frog completely terrified. There was nothing else to do but run immediately. Returning to a safe place, the phoenix was very surprised that our boy had managed to come back alive. After all, he was only level 40 and a normal human being. Breathless, the big-nosed one replied that stealing an egg wasn't that difficult, and it wasn't his first time. Now the god Hephaestus spoke to him, outraged at having his statue destroyed and the egg stolen. Our boy's crimes were unforgivable. The phoenix strongly recommended that the big-nosed one flee that place before it became impossible. When the egg hatched, the creature would certainly be able to tear Hephaestus to pieces. The big-nosed one thought that not even his shield would be able to withstand all the wounds that the god could inflict. Now he wanted to know if he could help the phoenix break that seal. Indeed, there was a way, but the creature believed that our boy was too weak. Motivated by this small possibility, our boy asked the phoenix to share it with him. Above the phoenix's head were two markings made with a very dark aura. They were divine seals, and both needed to be broken at the same time. The problem was that this could not be done by mortals. It was at that moment that our boy revealed the divine artifact he carried, the horns of the god of destruction. Even though having it with him was surprising, the phoenix replied that two artifacts were needed to break both seals at the same time. Our boy had the cooldown stone that could be activated to help with this task. The phoenix wanted to know how a mortal possessed so many rare items. Meanwhile, the god Hephaestus announced his arrival, ready to eradicate our protagonist from the face of the earth. Knowing this, the big-nosed one understood that his time was running out. Bravely, he prepared to do what was necessary. The first thing he did was use the cooldown stone. He needed to destroy those seals immediately. The phoenix was surprised that this simple mortal was capable of such a feat. But to the surprise of our big-nosed one, a threatening and furious figure finally appeared. It was the god Hephaestus, ready to reap the life of our boy. Looking up, the big-nosed one realized that the physical form of that god was extremely large. Claiming the title of King of Fire, Hephaestus made his presentation, demanding that our boy kneel. At that very moment, the phoenix finally managed to free herself from her shackles. The bird was furious, and for her, the false god had arrived at the right time. The deity was outraged since the creature had managed to break those seals while the phoenix was willing to make him pay for his crimes, soaking that lava with the blood of the cursed god. Only in this way could she cleanse the shame of having been deceived and imprisoned in that place. Watching everything from a safe location, our big-nosed one was surprised by the great power of these creatures. Hephaestus believed that since the phoenix had been sealed for several years, she would no longer have all her power. However, the creature was motivated by hatred, ready to annihilate the false god. The battle between them was extremely fierce. The force of the impact of their blows ended up throwing our big-nosed one far away. Fortunately, he managed to activate his shield to survive the impact. It didn't take long for Hephaestus to have one of his arms completely destroyed. The heat produced by the flames of the phoenix was much more intense than he could withstand. Trying to intimidate the creature, Hephaestus asked if the phoenix really wanted to challenge a god, but she did not believe in that title. She attacked once more, striking the giant's body and making a perfect cut in his abdomen. After that, he fell defeated to the ground. An impossible outcome had been achieved. Completely terrified, the big-nosed one understood that the phoenix's claws were indeed brutal, capable of cutting even gods. Now that divine blood had been spilled, the phoenix would be reborn with her flames. Quite intimidated by the display of power, our boy was willing to return the phoenix's egg to its original owner. However, the creature made it clear that this was a misunderstanding. In fact, she should be thanking our protagonist. She even gifted the big-nosed one with two objects that came from the blood of that god. They were drops of Hephaestus's blood, an extremely valuable item. Our protagonist felt flattered to have received such a gift. The phoenix said that this item would aid in the birth of her offspring. Despite many years having passed, the egg had still not hatched. It would be up to our protagonist to find a way to make that happen. As the place was about to be completely destroyed, the phoenix thanked for the help and began to flee. Our protagonist knew he needed to do the same, but wanted to collect the items from the place. He managed to rescue a spear that, for the phoenix, was nothing more than trash. But that was the divine staff of Hephaestus, a truly sensational item for a player like our boy. After they had wasted enough time, one thing became clear. It was time to leave. Our boy followed the path left by the phoenix. Outside, rare lightning filled the sky. Many statues were gathered in the divine dimension. The consciousness of Hephaestus returned to his body, and he realized that his avatar had been destroyed. Another god beside him asked why Hephaestus was so enraged over an avatar. Only then did he reveal that he was guarding the phoenix from death. Now things were complicated. Another creature said that the phoenix was crucial for the plans they had. They even consumed the deity itself to manage to seal it. Hephaestus failed them all. Outraged, the gods wanted to punish Hephaestus, believing he was incompetent. Amidst all those gods, one with large horns on his head commanded everyone to be quiet. They had spent several years accumulating divine essence, and it should have been enough. They needed to eradicate the source of the problem. Outside the fire temple, the powerful and intricately detailed conjurer awaited. Analyzing the portal, she knew that soon the temple would shatter and thought that our protagonist might have lost his life, until she was surprised by a magical circle in the sky from which the phoenix and our boy emerged. She was impressed that he had managed to escape alive once again. Moreover, she immediately recognized that phoenix. It was the phoenix of death. It was inexplicable how our boy had managed to associate with a creature of that level. Before them, the enormous creature began to flap its wings. Bidding farewell, it wished that our protagonist could hatch that egg, for they would soon meet again. Still very frightened, the big-nosed boy noted this message. Examining the egg, the conjurer asked if he had really done that, as surviving was already an extreme feat. Coming out with a reward was even more impressive. She decided to take a look at it too. Only then did our protagonist show what he received from the phoenix. The conjurer was quite impressed when she saw that divine blood. The system notified that by coming into contact with the item, our boy received the divinity of the god of fire, which was very good for his attributes. Even the little frog was strengthened, advancing its class to god of wealth. Our boy was so powerful and so rich that things would certainly become very easy from now on. Examining what had been strengthened in his class as a tamer, he was left speechless. Now he was capable of strengthening a beast of king level to mythical level. Even the conjurer was startled by the potential of the hidden classes. While they were talking, the phoenix egg began to move. Our boy was very surprised as he did not expect it to happen so quickly. Through the system, he discovered that in 72 hours the egg would hatch. It could be that his new divine power had accelerated this process. Thus, it was time to return home. The conjurer would have liked to explore the region a bit more, but our big-nosed boy informed her that they could return there soon. What the woman really wanted was to be paid. Finally, after that intense and heated adventure, our boy returned to the city. He went directly to a building where two people were arguing intensely. Once inside that place, the big-nosed boy asked what was happening. It was the dwarf and the governor of the city. Dressed in a very strange outfit was the governor, which made our boy ask what he was doing. This was definitely a very curious situation, and indeed the governor agreed with that. It was a bit complicated to describe. The guard who was there informed our protagonist that the governor was doing that to rebuild the city. Since the dwarves arrived, the governor had been trying to get them to cooperate in the city's reconstruction, but these people were difficult to negotiate with, and this only made our protagonist ask why the governor was in that costume. That was when the guard revealed that the governor discovered that the dwarves liked rice a lot, and that was why he was dressed as one. The poor guard lamented the governor's situation, who was doing everything to gain the dwarves' cooperation. Our protagonist asked the guard to inform the governor to change clothes immediately, as he would personally handle the situation with the dwarves. Aware of what was happening, our big-nosed boy realized that the dwarves were very stubborn. Entering Thor's workshop, the dwarf, thinking it was the governor, ordered him to leave, even though he was a friend of our protagonist, as he was already fed up. But he was surprised by the arrival of our boy. Treating him very politely, he asked if he had really managed to find the fire temple. Indeed, that was exactly what our boy did. Surprised by this discovery, the dwarf wanted to know if his people could be taken there, but unfortunately, that would not be possible. Showing Hephaestus's staff, he also informed that the entire temple had been destroyed. For Thor, now that our boy held the staff of the god of fire, he was the chosen one, the only one capable of leading the dwarf tribe. Definitely, our protagonist would take advantage of this situation, asking the dwarves to stay in the city and help with its reconstruction. Without questioning, they promised to obey the orders of the envoy of the god of fire. Seizing the opportunity, our boy informed Thor that he needed more equipment pieces. Inside the governor's office, the poor man was wearing another costume. He hoped that this time he could convince those stubborn dwarfs to cooperate, even if just a little. He was then interrupted by the guard who brought the news obtained by our protagonist. It didn't take long for the dwarfs to start contributing to the reconstruction of the place. The governor believed that his efforts in wearing those ridiculous costumes had contributed to this. Only then did the guard correct his information, explaining that it was our protagonist who had convinced the dwarfs. This left the governor disappointed, but the truth was that with just a few words, our boy managed to persuade those stubborn ones. The man's sadness was so great that he even wished to find a job as a clown in the nearest circus. Back at the Duke's house, someone was telling the widow that our boy was very arrogant. Those men were sent by royalty and came by order of the prince. They were upset because they couldn't meet our boy, which was necessary to grant him the title of nobility. They were also not there for nothing. The prince who sent them was deeply in love with the widow and wanted to take her to the capital so they could talk better. The widow didn't think twice to refuse the proposal since she had no eyes for the prince. At that exact moment, our protagonist arrived, wanting to know what they were discussing. His arrival immediately sparked immense joy in the widow. The woman hurried to speak with him, eager to reunite with him. The prince's envoys finally found our boy and were excited because there were many talented people in that room. The messenger, however, was disrespectful to our big-nosed friend, saying he expected to find a special man, but all he saw was a coward hiding behind the widow. Our protagonist revealed that he was not in a good mood and would love to take some lives just for fun. The messenger found that attitude quite arrogant and doubted very much that he would be defeated by our protagonist in combat, as he believed he should know who he was dealing with. Before he could continue with his insults, he was brutally struck by the big-nosed boy, who landed a right hook on his jaw. Now that the messenger was down on the ground, our boy apologized for hitting too hard. The other men who witnessed that were frightened and apologized for their companion's rudeness. Going straight to the point that brought him to the widow's house, our protagonist asked about his title of nobility. One of those men was a deputy capable of carrying out such formalities. It was just a matter of signing the documents and returning to the capital. This made life much easier for our boy, which left the widow extremely happy. It's incredible how this work insists on putting our boy's ego up high. Everything he does that is relevant is communicated to all the other players just so they feel envy. How bizarre. Everyone is becoming his fan, imagining that there must be nothing impossible for our protagonist. Immediately, a large crowd became enthusiastic, thinking they could be recruited as followers of this phenomenal player. The widow knew that our boy had persuaded the dwarfs, which greatly increased the value of the workshops that belonged to him. This made our boy even more excited. Outside, there were many buyers, and the offers started at 40 million. In a matter of seconds, the offers doubled in value. Everyone wanted to own property in that region. Our boy said there was no problem selling his shops, but asked those men to be patient. After all, they weren't cheap at all. And this didn't seem to be a problem for those potential buyers who were willing to offer generous amounts of money. Some of them were even offering other very suspicious things. Definitely, if our boy were a malicious person, he could take wicked advantage of this situation. Thanks to his God of Wealth ability, the amount of money received was being multiplied. Back in the real world, he realized that in the forum, he had once again become a topic among all the players. By managing to establish the dwarfs in that city, it was growing and attracting foreigners. This would greatly favor our boy's material growth. Now he knew it was only a matter of time before he became a target for others with bad intentions. What they didn't know was that on that very night, something grand was about to happen. Lightning cut through the sky and the thunder was terrifying. All the players were being affected by it. No one could say for sure what was happening. Only our big-nosed friend knew what it meant. Finally, the game world and the real world were becoming one. The system asked our protagonist which ability he wanted to extract, and the boy said he wished to have the Shield of Money. As expected, players who had passed level 10 could use a game ability in the real world, and his personal attributes were also being integrated into reality, making our boy extremely powerful. To test his hypothesis, he jumped out the window. Falling to the ground with extreme grace, it was time to eliminate some competitors. Many people were very surprised by the developments of this fusion. Among them were evil individuals who wished to use their abilities to commit atrocities in the real world, as some had their bodies greatly strengthened. But among them were also honest people. A poor soul wished to use his speed to work as a delivery person even more efficiently. It was truly impressive what ordinary people could do now. And our protagonist headed straight for the headquarters of a certain business group. As soon as he arrived, he noticed suspicious activity. Our boy was surrounded by unknown individuals who believed they had him cornered. They demanded that our protagonist hand over everything of value if he wanted to keep his legs intact. One of these thugs tried to threaten our big-nosed hero, saying that his buddy with the knife was at level 11 and very powerful. Sighing deeply, our young man realized that the world was still full of stupid people. He immediately grabbed one of those idiots by the neck. This made another of the wrongdoers threaten our boy, saying he would end his life if he harmed his companion. But all that threat achieved was a kick to the temple. The three idiots were knocked out on the ground. Our boy had not imagined they were so weak. And inside that building, a party seemed to be happening. Here's my humble observation about the very exotic clothes of that extra. For those men, this was a historic moment. Investing in the Apocalypse game had finally paid off. But their party was being interrupted at that very moment. Someone quite intimidating had arrived on the scene. However, our protagonist was disguised, wearing a mask of the first famous character from our dear Akira Toriyama, and I hope that if heaven exists, Akira is in it. One of those extras with a scar on his face wanted to know where that idiot had come from. Removing the mask from his face, our protagonist wanted to know if he hadn't been recognized just by his voice. Those people immediately recognized him. Some believed he had been involved in a car accident. Mocking and belittling our boy, that scar-faced guy wanted to know if he had come to beg for money. But the truth is that our big-nosed hero was there to make things very clear. He knew that the accident that caused his parents' death had been caused by those people, and the man did not feel intimidated by the accusation. On the contrary, he wanted to tell the whole truth. One of his henchmen tried to interrupt the confession since the scar-faced man was very drunk. But before he could do anything, our protagonist placed one of his fingers directly on that extra's idea maker. Since he was asking the questions in that place, he didn't want to be interrupted. He wanted to hear the truth now, and it was best that they did as he was asking, as this could contribute to a peaceful death. The extras couldn't believe he had pierced a skull using just his finger. That shouldn't be possible. One of them began to suspect that our protagonist might be the famous player of the Apocalypse. Hearing this conjecture, our protagonist realized that not everyone there was so stupid. Still, the scar-faced man did not feel intimidated. In fact, he doubted very much that our protagonist could be someone so relevant. Then, approaching our boy, he confirmed that he had been responsible for sabotaging that vehicle. Everything exploded according to his plans. It was just a pity that that orphan hadn't died too. After hearing that, our boy found himself deeply immersed in a hatred he had never felt in his entire life. Even so, the idiot continued mocking the situation, believing that nothing would happen. Taking advantage of his monetary influence, he ensured that whoever killed our boy would receive a quality gold-level equipment. But none of those people had enough courage to try anything against our protagonist. And to make matters worse, our protagonist asked who would be brave enough to try something. Then he immediately grabbed that idiot's finger. Ensuring that he wouldn't have a quick death, he said that every bone in his body would be fractured. Our boy started with the fingers. After making him feel a bit of pain,